Thank you very much, Dr. Dekkers. Professor Glover, the floor is yours.
Clara, thank you very much indeed. And Marijn, that was very interesting. I think we're going to have a good conversation. I'm delighted to be here. Who wouldn't want to be at an innovation conference? And one of the reasons I'm so pleased to be here and to talk about science is that for me, Europe invented the modern world, the one in which we live. And we invented that during the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution. And we invented it using our science, our engineering, our technology, our philosophy, our arts, and our humanities. And so, for us, I think we have a history of understanding that technology can deliver us a way of addressing global problems. It can provide for us a way to live longer, happier, healthier, without impact, negative impact on our environment. It can offer us opportunities for sustainable energy, for being able to live within the resources of our planet. So we have all these plus points, we have all this history. So you might think then, why don't we just embrace innovation as a society in Europe? And I think, interestingly, one of the things that holds us back is that we are incredibly modest about our achievements. So what have we achieved in Europe? So let's just start with the A's. Aspirin, as was mentioned earlier, Airbus, Ariane 5 rocket launchers. It could go on and on and on. We achieve a huge amount. And also, by our collaboration and coordination, we can do science in Europe that could not be done anywhere else in the world. And an example of that I would give you is CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. That research initiative is an example of outstanding European leadership that attracts the best in the world to come to Europe and to push forward or push away the boundaries of our knowledge and to use that knowledge for real impact. So as well as generating fantastic knowledge about the nature of mass, which is one of the purposes of the Large Hadron Collider, it's also provided us along the way with medical imagers, with the internet, with lots of other achievements which we could never have predicted or indeed invented by sitting down with a blank sheet of paper and thinking about it. Now, in doing our research, which for me is fundamental for all of these achievements, we have a strange thing in Europe, and that strange thing is that publicly funded research is often regarded as being good, and business-funded research is often regarded as being a little suspect in some way. Now, this is something that we might find in Europe, but that we would not necessarily find elsewhere in the world. And so this issue boils down to me as a fundamental mistrust in industry and the objectives of industry. And I think there's a real problem there, because whilst this is maintained in Europe, I think we will fail to realize the potential of all the research we fund, whether it be public funding or research funding by industry. The citizen will not realize the positive impact of that research if fundamentally they don't trust who is providing the knowledge from that research. So why is it that we don't trust? Well, one of the reasons might be to do with people's perception of business practice, or indeed some business practices that have happened historically that people are not comfortable with. And I'm reminded of an entrepreneur who is a little bit of a hero of mine, and that is Robert Bosch. So I would say to a different audience, you know, those spark plugs you have in your car, well, they're probably Bosch spark plugs, except most of you probably don't have a car with spark plugs anymore. I do, but that's because mine's over 20 years old. So Robert Bosch developed all this new technology, a lot of it automotive technology, and he built up a huge business. But something that he said, I think, should be a motive or a motto for all of industry. And that is, he said, I would rather lose profit than trust, because he realized what was really important in business. Profit you can always regain. Trust, if you lose it, is terribly hard. So for me, there is an issue around trust in industry. And until we recapture that and citizens feel that they do trust industry, we have a problem in really pushing forward the agenda on innovation in Europe. So let me take an example. And a good example for me, because I know it excites particularly a lot of emotion that Marijn was talking about earlier. And that's of genetically modified organisms, and particularly GM technology with respect to plants and crops. Now, when you speak to most European citizens, they are not, in principle, actually against the technology of genes being changed between one plant and another, because actually we've been doing that for years. Centuries, in fact, and we've called it plant breeding. But when we do it in a specific forensic way, citizens are nervous. And when you try to drill down to figure out why is it that they are nervous, I think for me the bottom line comes to the fact that they feel that this is large multinational companies taking control of my food. I don't see what's in it for me, and that's a really important motivator for the citizen. If it's not obvious what's in it for them, they're not that keen. And then they're saying that I think there's also aggressive marketing. So against that background, we have to think about how do we develop policy and legislation to allow us to use new technologies to be able to address what is a major global problem, feeding 7 billion people, in a sustainable way. And if we don't get it right and we don't have better dialogue, I think we have a problem. Now, many people, citizens, get very anxious that business gets involved in discussing with policymakers about new opportunities. And in a way, that's quite interesting, because let me give you an example of lots of people getting involved to produce information that we all use. And that example might be Wikipedia. So I bet you all use Wikipedia. And Wikipedia has successfully undermined an age-old business model, Encyclopedia Britannica, where hundreds of university professors gathered information, reviewed it, and put it together in a huge set of volumes that you could look up as a reference manual. Now we have Wikipedia. Anybody can put information on Wikipedia. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their qualifications are. But we have a collective brain. And the collective brain weeds out the bad information and keeps the good information. Would it be possible to have that sort of model when it came to gathering evidence for policy making? Would that be a model for the future? Perhaps something that we should think about. Unless we get it right, as I said, I think we are in danger of sometimes doing the best science in the world, generating the most exciting knowledge, but yet not doing anything with it, and having some of our best companies moving elsewhere, not supporting the entrepreneurial spirit here on our home shores in Europe, because for some reason we don't demand innovation. So I think for me we have an enormous challenge. And one of the things finally that I would like to see is that within the Commission, the European Commission, which gathers evidence for policy making, I think we could examine if there was a new way that that could be done, so that we could have a single evidence portal, so that we gather the best evidence in a way that's not biased, so we do this independent of any of the policy interests, and we have an evidence gathering machine that looks for the evidence inside the Commission, that goes outside to look for the best place to find it, that interacts with the agencies to deliver evidence to us. And then we put that together in a portfolio so that the evidence is clear, it's transparent how we got it, and everyone, citizens, business, policymakers, politicians, can all look at and examine that evidence. I think the last thing to say about that is we would have high quality evidence, but from my point of view as a scientist and a scientific advisor, it is up to politicians how they use the evidence. I think the change we have to make in the future, because it is important if we are to be truly innovative, is that we should not allow politicians to somehow say, oh, there isn't enough evidence, or we need more before I can do this, or I'm not quite sure if I totally agree with the evidence. I think it's perfectly okay to have all the evidence, let's say on GM, and then decide, but we're still not going to have GM crops grown in Europe for other reasons, and those might be economic, social, ethical, philosophical, whatever. And politicians can do that because they're elected by people. Scientists are not. So I can't tell people what to do. But I would like to give them the best possible evidence, because I think with the best possible evidence, by harnessing that world-class knowledge that we generate here in Europe and that we can procure from elsewhere, we put ourselves in the driving seat of the best possible future for all our citizens and all the business, the environmental, the health impacts, everything that we would want to see as positive in Europe. So for me, that's our challenge then, is trying to ensure that people respect the evidence, and that if they choose to ignore it, they are honest about why they're ignoring it. I think if we do that, then we have an excellent societal debate. Thank you very much.